Hi folks, with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the recent mass migration protest in Australia that got a pretty good turnout, actually. The counter-protesters were organised by the NGOs and government-funded activist groups and so on, but the anti-immigration was grassroots. So the government frowned upon this, the mass migration, globalist controlled government frowned upon this, and the usual commentators were all running around screaming Nazi and fascist and swastika and so on. Now, the complaint of the people is that mass migration is hurting all of us in the sense, or certainly the people already here, the citizens. It's increasing the price of rents and real estates. It's increasing the price of education. It's increasing the price of, it's increasing the taxes. It's lowering the standard of living and the purchasing power of the paycheck. And it's because the affirmative action, DEI and race quota programs, it's unfairly disadvantaging the local white people. So they quite clearly are upset about this. Now, the globalist controlled media propaganda machines they're all fascists and Nazis. Where's your swastikas and so on. That's not the point that's being made. The point being made is that something in the order of 500,000 people a year are being brought into Australia. The vast majority of those are Indians, and they don't have qualifications. Most of them speak very poor English, and they're being gifted jobs that otherwise would go to local people. So now, why are these masses of Indians needed? White people are struggling enough with cost of living and struggling enough with trying to find jobs, paying the rent and all this sort of thing. Why do we need more of these people? And if these people really do have something worthwhile to offer, why and how is it that they have to be gifted jobs through racial quotas and that sort of thing? Why are there entire public service departments that only a few years ago were all white, now they're all Indian? So people have legitimate concerns, these legitimate questions. Why is mass migration needed? Now, there's all sorts of lies, then lies and more lies and lies. Well, we have to bring them in because there's a skill shortage. That's a lie. We have to bring all these. And if you're going to bring people in, why would you bring them in from third world shitholes? You'd get them from other white countries if you wanted skills and educational standards. Remember, most of these Indians coming in don't have the qualifications they claim. And anything they've got through bribery and corruption. The mere fact they've made it to Australia is because they had to bribe a shitload of people to get here. So these are hardly ideal immigrants. Now, but the Indians have sort of go, it is racist. And so let's just have a look. They're claiming that they're coming out with the usual line. I am only trying to look after my family. That is all I want, just to look after my family. And you racist. No. That's just the propaganda line. Every Indian, you'll notice that in Florida, after that Indian truck driver was, indirectly involved in killing those Americans, that all the Indians suddenly exploded with, he is only trying to look after his family. That is all he's trying to do. So that's their catch cry, and their views are, we come from a very poor country, so we want to go to a rich country and parasite of that. So I just want to go through the thing. The Indians insist that there's a few things to consider. Firstly is that pretty much the entire population of India, other than the rich Brahmins at the apex, pretty much the entire population of India wants to come to the West. And when I say India, I'm talking about the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all that sort of thing. So there are 2 billion with a B, over 2 billion people in that subcontinent. And they all want to come to the rich white West, and they believe so they're gagging to get the fuck out of India. So that's number two is that they perceive themselves as entitled, and the propaganda machine in India and the subcontinent generally says that they were rich, prosperous, country. We're living in rich and splendid, plentiful harmony till evil Whitey turned up and then took everything, stole everything, nothing left. That's of course a total and absolute outrageous lie, but it's the propaganda that's pumped through the Indian schools and is talking points in their nationalist media and so on, so that when Indians come to the West, they're only taking back, in effect, what was stolen from them. And these are talking points that are also used by international NGOs and various people smuggling operations and so on. Now, the Australian government, or all Western governments, have made the tragic mistake of appointing Indians to be immigration agents and all that sort of thing in their embassies and immigration departments and so on. And these people take bribes and kickbacks on a grand scale because they know that every Indian wants to get the fuck out of there and go to the West. It's not like it's a small market or something. It's a massive market, so they can extract money from whoever they want in order to further these, this scam of moving Indians into the West. It's not like Western governments are pushing back against the globalist cabal. Is very much pushing Western governments, Australia, India, and so on, to take bulk numbers of Indians. So what happens? So the Indians managed to get here through all sorts of corruption and so on. Now, whether they come as students or for fake colleges, most of them are attending fake colleges. They get here as a supposed student on a student visa, then they work. Now, they may have 10 hours a week or something like that they're allowed to work. So they just use 5-6 different names and work 60 hours a week. And maybe they just deliver pizzas or they do whatever, but it's better than whatever they can get in India. And they'll live 10, 15 to a 1-bedroom apartment so they can send a few bucks back to their family in India. So that's all a scam. Now, there are some that from the wealthier Indian families that do genuinely come to Australia, but not for an education. We need to understand that. Remember, these are very corrupt people. Now, sure, there are exceptions to this. There are some bright Indians, obviously. There are some industrious Indians, obviously. Just not very many, that's all. And out of the ones that are coming out, you'd be lucky if 1 or 2% were actually worthwhile immigrants, adding any value to the Australian economy. So these Indians come and they pay for it. Now, when they say they've got some bullshit degree in they bribe to get in because it's hardly rigorous in India. And then they come to Australia and they're going to say do a master's or a PhD. And effectively, if they pay the money, they're given entrance to the PhD program, even though if they were really tested rigorously, that they wouldn't even make it into high school or something. Nonetheless, so they're here doing. Now they consider that when they've paid the money to the university, that they've actually paid for the PhD. They haven't paid for the opportunity to get a rigorous education. No, they've paid to get that bit of paper. So they perceive once they've paid for it, that's it. That bit of paper belongs to them, and they are entitled to it and paying this. So that's the gig there with education. A lot of them are on a fake education, a fake student visas. There's also a lot of overstays in Australia when the visas expire with Indians. They're the worst sort of group for that. So, okay, they get to Australia then under some sort of work visa or and they're given priority in certainly government departments because they're brown. And again, it's staggering that you can go into some government departments, see only white people, or maybe one Indian or something, and then you go back a year later and there's only Indians, maybe one white person. Whoa. So clearly white people are being pushed aside to give Indians jobs. So that's hardly, if the economy is growing and producing all these new jobs, then, and then immigrants need to fill those jobs, that's one thing. But when white people are actually being physically removed from these jobs and the jobs are then gifted, non-meritoriously gifted to the Indians, then that's hardly a step forward. The economy is not benefiting anything from there. Jobs are being taken from the local white people and given to the Indians, under quota systems and affirmative action and so on. So that's no value. Now, if Indians were winning the job meritoriously, then but they're not. They're not winning it meritoriously. They're again being gifted these jobs through quotas and affirmative action and so on. Now, the Indians insist they're adding value. You work hard. I work very hard for my family. No, you fucking don't. You gifted a job. You couldn't get any. Every Indian that I've hired, I've had to fire through a failure to, they've said on their CV they've got a triple PhD in this or that, and they haven't. They've got nothing. They can't even cut one syllable of computer code, even though they claim to be a triple PhD in computer science and so on. But also, in addition to that, it's been sloth. They've been lazy and fucking useless, and think, they just won't be told that, why should I do any work, and why should I have to, I'm a socially, you guys should be lucky that I'm here at all. And they've been given this propaganda machine thing, as much by the white propaganda as brown propaganda, where Australians are lazy and stupid, and the Indians are coming to save Australia from this lazy and stupid local population, because nothing could be further from the truth. It's the Indians who are lazy, not necessarily stupid all the time, but certainly lazy. So the Indians bring they're coming in absolute mass. Entire suburbs overnight have become Indian. Entire streets have just suddenly gone from zero Indians to being nothing but Indians. Now, how, no one's going to appreciate that. No one's going to think that's a good idea, but the Indians perceive they're entitled to this. They perceive they're entitled. Now, the entitlement comes from their desperation to get out of India or get out of the subcontinent, and do anything, bribe anything, bribe anyone, make any claim, tell any lie to get out of the subcontinent and into the rich West. But they're parasites. Now, look, there'll be exceptions, but overall they're parasites. They're stealing. Now, even if they jobs are created for them, and it doesn't mean that the white person's lost their job or moved to one side, which it does mean most of the time. Even if jobs are specially created for them, jobs that aren't needed, functions that aren't needed, just jobs that are created, then we pay for that through our tax system. Now, either they're hired into big banks or big engineering firms and so on, just invented bullshit jobs. But that means that company now has to charge more for its services, which means it then has to get in corrupt relationships with the government to get government contracts at a higher price. So again, the taxpayer is paying for that. If it's for the public service and the jobs aren't needed, which they aren't, Indians are just being gifted bullshit jobs, then taxes have to be increased to pay for all these bullshit jobs that are being created. So no, the Indians are costing us a fortune here in Australia, lowering our standard of living and contributing next to nothing. Is there going to be one or two exceptions? Well, yeah, but only one or two. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.